may seem a bit of a silly place to plant a climbing wisteria right in the middle of the border with not a wall in sight. I planted this a year ago, and what I intend to do is to grow it as a single stem up this stake, and when it reaches about a foot above it, I shall cut the top off to encourage branches to grow out, and I shall grow myself a beautiful standard wisteria tree. It has wonderful flowers and, of course, super foliage as well, so it's an ideal tree for a small garden. Well, I must say, I thought we'd finished with the Winter Olympics, but they've arrived at Barnsdale now. But I certainly won't be skating around my borders in this weather because it does more harm than good. But of course, like in any garden, there's plenty to keep me busy. And no such problems for Stephen Lacey, who this week starts the first in a 4-season series on foliage. And with fresh fruit and veg in mind, we're joined by organic gardener Bob Flowerdew, who's starting a season growing the natural way in his Norfolk garden. I'll be announcing this year's prestigious garden design competition, in which you can win great prizes, including a gardening cruise for 2 and fame. And Nick Wray visits a tiny basement garden, packed with delights, but not without its problems.
Is a complete thug, takes no prisoners. It really is quite a frightening plant, really. I don't know, its days might be numbered.
Well, I hope our days aren't numbered with this Arctic weather. But of course, snow actually is quite a good insulator for plants against really cold conditions. But here and there, if it's lying on shrubs, pressing down the branches, it can sometimes cause damage. So if you see this sort of thing, shake the snow off. Later on this year, if the soil ever dries out, I want to plant up a new herbaceous border. And there's no doubt that the cheapest way to do that is to raise your own plants from seed. Now, with those that flower late in the season, it's quite easy because if you sow them now, they'll flower this year. But even some of the early flowers will produce some surprising results. And down at the RHS at Wisley, they've been doing a trial on Delphinium seeds. Now, they sowed them in early spring. They planted them out in their trial ground in May, and this is what they look like by August. Now, of course, they're going to grow into bigger plants and they'll flower again next year, but next year at their normal time. So it really is well worth doing. Now, the trouble is that with Delphinium seeds, they are just a little bit temperamental. They need to be sown fresh or at least have been stored properly. Now, sowing is really quite straightforward. You can just sow on the top of the compost, doing it very, very sparingly so that you don't have seeds all crammed up together, and then just put a little bit of vermiculite over the top like that, and then a bit of glass and paper and put them on the staging or on the windowsill. They don't actually need any heat. Another way you can do it if you haven't got a greenhouse is to put them into a margarine container like this and put a little bit of kitchen tissue in the bottom, dampen it and put your seeds on top of that, put the lid on, put them on the floor in the airing cupboard, and within about 14 days or so they will have germinated. Now, it is essential with these, they must not dry out. If they look like drying out, give them a little squirt with water and make sure they're okay. And of course, when they've germinated, you've got to be very careful with them and put them out into little pots. But if you've got special seed like this, now, I like to make sure that I get every single seed. So I like to grow them in modules. It takes a little bit of patience, but the way to do it is to take a matchstick, pick up a seed on the end like that, and just put it into the compost. And then when you've done the whole tray, once again, cover it with vermiculite, put it on the bench, and away they'll go. They'll take, again, about 14 days to germinate, and they come up like mustard and cress.
It's in autumn that leaves really steal the show. Fireworks overhead, Catherine wheels across the lawn, and a scrunchy carpet underfoot. But all through the year, leaves are contributing to the beauty of the garden. They're expanding growth, permanent form, shapes, colours, textures. In fact, they're the very backbone and building blocks of the design. Over the next 4 weeks, I'll be exploring the subject of leaves. And to chart their seasonal cycle, we've come here to Powys Castle in mid-Wales. For me, one of the most inspiring gardens in the country. Leaves play a prominent role here, and we'll see how their many uses in borders, pots, on banks and against walls can help and encourage us in the design and planting of the smaller gardens we have at home. Yet in the garden centre, foliage rarely does itself justice. Take a plant like this, the common yew, Taxus baccata. A less inviting thing could hardly be imagined. No flowers, no virtues to speak of, and with a price tag of £20. The roses and bedding plants are going to win every time. There are roses and bedding plants here at Powys Castle too, but you can see that it isn't they that are setting the backdrop for the medieval fortress, nor the mood within these astonishing gardens. Green trees are bringing the spirit of woodland, orchard and parkland to the fringes of the 17th century terraces. And of course, setting that irresistible Powys blend of playfulness and plump contentment, those dreary old yews. In short, the mood here is being set by leaves. Maybe not the first thing to grab you in the garden centre, but invariably the element that gives the garden its structure and character, and you the longest lasting pleasure. The most valuable use of leaves is to give the garden some year-round form, shelter and furnishing. You can't build your planting entirely out of wispy, ephemeral performers, coloured hay as the garden designer Russell Page called them. You need a pattern of strong shapes and comforting greenery that will hold the garden together even in the winter months. This pattern can be rigid and formal, as here on the terraces, a framework of lines, walls and mounds, provided by evergreen box hedges, yew and holly topiary. These contain and package the hay during the summer months and stand out clean and crisp in the dead of winter. This formal approach is very much back in fashion at the moment, but there's quite an art in keeping the plants razor-edged and in good heart. Here at Powys, the evergreen structures are not only subjected to regular pruning, but occasionally major surgery. This work is supervised by one of the National Trust's most celebrated head gardeners, Jimmy Hancock.
The great art of cutting yew edges is really to get them really solid and firm, and not to be afraid to actually go straight in. We have cut them right back, and you can see that there's very little green growth there, so there's not really any sense to leave any whiskers in at all. And you can also see the small growth already there, pure growth ready to start. So even within a first year, you'll get quite good signs. But within 5 years, you'll get quite good cover.
What I like about the Powys ones is that, you know, they are all sort of rather larger than life, and I think that's quite a nice idea for back home.
Yes, I think in small gardens people are frightened of height, and I think very often they can use height. And yew, of course, is a super subject.
Well, I never thought I'd say it, but thank the Lord for plastic in the garden, because it does enable us gardeners to actually control the weather. Now, I've cleared these paths down here, but you can see that the rest of the garden is under a blanket of snow. Yet, underneath my cloches, the soil is warm and dry and ready for sowing and planting. And cloches don't have to cost you a lot of money. This one is made with 3 8-foot canes, just fixed to some old bits of wood banged into the ground. and covered with clear polythene held down with bricks. It's 8 foot long and it cost under a £5. And now the soil underneath is nice and warm and I can plant out some of the things that I raised in the greenhouse. Or you could do them on the windowsill almost as well. There's quite a range here. There are peas, radishes, broad beans, spinach, lettuce, cabbage, turnips, beetroots and carrots. I grow a lot of my plants in these plastic modules. I think they're great because they produce nice little plants with a perfect root system all of its own, which will be disturbed very little when you plant. Now, I grew the peas in that way and also the radishes with about 4 or 5 seeds per cell. And now I'm going to plant out the broad beans. I use this planting stick, which is absolutely invaluable, and the broad beans will go in 6 inches apart. And notice too that I've put the radishes in between the peas and the broad beans because they'll be harvested first and that will give the others room to grow a bit later on. Oh Lord, now it's started snowing again, so I've better hurry up and get this lot covered up as quickly as I possibly can. At the same time as planting, it's a jolly good idea to sow exactly the same crops because they'll mature later, obviously, and give you a succession of harvesting. Again, you use your planting board, and all you do is to press it in like that, just to make a shallow drill, as you can see there, and then sow into that, like that, and then just cover it up with your hand, pat it down, and away you go.
Like most gardeners, I garden simply because I enjoy it. I garden organically, though, because it's just so much more fulfilling. You see, organic gardening is a change in attitude. Instead of using poisons to kill the pests and chemicals to force the plants to grow, we use our wit and cunning to outmaneuver the pests and to ensure our plants are healthy and strong. And the organic method is thus just so much more rewarding. Firstly, and most importantly, organic gardeners don't feed the plants. We feed the soil. We foster, guard and encourage the microlife in the soil. And it's that microlife that creates that rich, humus-rich, fertile soil. You see, what we're after is by using compost and manures to make that lovely brown sugar textured soil that's loved by gardeners and loved by the plants. If we give them this natural fertility, the plants grow strong and healthy, and then they throw off pests and diseases. And what's more, all that fertility in the soil encourages lots of other life in the garden. I started this garden 11 years ago, and I've run it totally organically. I produce all my own fruit and vegetables, potatoes and onions to last me and my family the year, and also luscious tomatoes, wonderful melons, sweet corn, but also all the fruits, berries, strawberries, the top fruit like apples and pears, and the juices from them. This whole garden shows that the organic method doesn't just work, it works really well. Throughout this season, I'm going to show you how I will convert this 25-foot by 25-foot piece of orchard into a thriving organic garden with a vegetable bed, soft fruit, and climbers on the fence behind me. At the moment, it's all down to weed. It's a good mixture. We have couch grass, creeping buttercup, ground elder, plenty of difficult weeds. We can get rid of all these weeds without using any chemicals or without too much hard work. You don't have to go to all the work of digging out weeds. You can kill them by excluding the light. Now I'm going to use old carpet. First of all, I mark out the area, dig an isolation trench around the edge to stop weed roots growing into the area underground. Having marked out the area, I just cover it in old carpet. Not every carpet will do. Foam-back carpets disintegrate and make a mess. A nice bit of Axminster is ideal. The heavier the carpet, though, the better. Put it down upside down. Carpet works better that way, and it also looks neater. Make sure that there are good overlaps. You mustn't let the light in anywhere. And if there is a hole, patch it with a thick piece of newspaper or another bit of carpet. At the edge, make sure that the carpet hangs down into the trench so that no light can get underneath. After a few months, the weeds will all have turned yellow, died, rotted, and become fertility. There are alternatives to carpet. You can use black plastic, as long as it totally excludes the light. However, black plastic does blow away very easily, so it needs better securing. Tuck the edge into a slit trench and firm it in well. This may not be the traditional way of starting a new bed, but it's a lot easier. In a couple of months, I'm going to be able to cut holes through the carpet, plant out courgettes, tomatoes, sweet corn, brassicas. In the autumn, I'll have lovely clean soil when I remove the carpet, and I won't have used a single chemical.
The garden's absolutely superb, Camilla. It's absolutely jam-packed full of plants. Has it always been a garden here?
Well, a sort of garden when I arrived, but not much really, just paving stones, old cement blocks with a few bits of York stone, and the beds were flat.
Even in late summer, Camilla Shivarg's tiny basement garden is packed with colourful and interesting plants. The paving is in the minority and everything's sort of bursting out.
The paving's in the beds. I raised the beds.
It's been a real challenge to transform an old paved yard into such a lush and surprising garden, especially as it's dominated by a 40-foot wall at the bottom, and one side lies in heavy shade. You've got ferns and hydrangeas here, so I assume this is the shady corner.
Deep shade, yes.
Even the hebe's in quite dense shade.
Yeah. Well, the ferns, that adiantum is hardy, but the rest I buy as house plants. I buy them in garden centres, and just some survive, some don't. But
do you find that cheaper doing that?
Well, I just you can have a bit of fun with it. If it does well in a house, it must like shade. That's my theory. It's my new theory.
Well, it's worth experimenting.
And this one lasted from last year. Hardy begonias. They do very well in the shade.
Well, they're quite unusual, aren't they, the hardy begonias?
Evans Eye, I think its name is.
Yes, that's right. Evans Eye.
Yeah, it's lovely.
Now, hydrangeas are standard plants for shade, but I see this one sort of gets quite leggy.
Yeah, I don't really mind that, though, because then it gives me room to plant underneath. In fact, I probably have taken off some of the branches off the bottom to
Oh, right, encourage it
yes.
to go up.
Yes, I'm doing everything the wrong way round, but yes.
So over here, there's obviously some sun lovers on this side.
Yes, it gets a bit more sun this side.
The cannas and the variegated grasses doing really well.
Mm-hmm. Except the cat eats that one.
And I also like the way that everything's in tiers growing up, and you've got this huge euphorbia. That's quite an unusual one, isn't it?
Mellifera, yes. I think it's lovely. But it doesn't look so good from straight on. I think it just naturally loses the leaves, so I grow things to mask them, basically. Yeah.
Now, clearly you're gardening in quite a confined space here. Are you having to sort of do a lot of pruning and training and pulling of the plants out? Are you constantly sort of reshaping everything?
Yes, they sort of tremble when they see me coming, actually. Because they're usually going to be moved. Yeah. You know, I built up the beds with these concrete slabs that were on the ground, and to get the beds nearer to the sun, for one reason, and I didn't know what on earth to do with the slabs anyway. And I think you can see things better at this height.
Yes.
When you go to flower shows, they're always displayed at this height. Then you put them on the ground when you get home, and you're disappointed. So this is it's all.
So it brings all the small detail right up to
yes, I mean,
level.
yeah, and I've been building up the trellis, you know, to sort of catch up with the plants, because everything gets so tall.
So rather than putting trellis up and letting plants grow up, though, it's the other way around. Now, see here, you've got a great effect with the purple acer and the light green helichrysum underneath.
When I planted it, I was very disappointed because you couldn't really see it. So I had this idea of underplanting it with helichrysum so that it would set off the purple foliage.
Now, on the wall, you've got mostly Virginia creeper, but you've got that superb hop as well, which is fruiting at the moment. And, I mean, it looks absolutely spectacular looking up through it.
Well, it's only 2 years old. It's a golden hop, and this time of year it's more dull green, but earlier on it's a lovely fresh apple green. But it is a complete thug. I mean, it seeds itself and it sort of spreads underground like a triffid with great underground runners. And, I mean, it takes no prisoners. It really is quite a frightening plant, really. I don't know. Its days might be numbered.
All right, so that's something you would plant with caution in a small garden.
Definitely, definitely. They never tell you these things, but, you know.
So what future plans have you got for this area of the garden?
Well, I'm always looking for sort of evergreens or tall, solid shapes for the back that can compete with the wall, which takes away a lot of the moisture, I suppose, and it's very dry shade. And then in the front, I like to have more airy, sort of see-through plants, like campanulas.
The grasses are good for that as well, aren't they?
Yes, but the cat hasn't discovered that one yet. But it's something about variegated grass and cats.
Even underneath the terrace here, you've chopped it block full of plants. And,
well, it's actually very sunny, this spot, too, and it was wasted, so I bunged in another bed last year because I am a plantaholic. I mean, I'd be a well-dressed woman if I didn't have a garden, let's face it.
Well, what an ingenious gardener. Now, I know this is folly, but it keeps me happy. I love fresh vegetables, and the earliest crop of the year comes from these radishes, which I grow in a clay pot on the windowsill. And this is even sillier. I've just planted up the world's smallest vegetable garden. Again, a clump of radishes. I've crammed in a couple of small lettuces here and a few spring onions too. Now, yes, they are going to fight each other for space, but they'll certainly mature all right. They'll look good while they do it, and I'll tell you what,
Taking us up to midnight, Matt James turns a school garden into a watery world of wonder in his Eco-Eden next. Then at 11, we're looking for subterranean fungal delicacies in the trees that made Britain, rounding off the day with a brush with wildlife in Nature's Calendar.